Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of By the Numbers. I'm feeling festive. I've got a Christmas jumper on. I guess Duncan didn't get that memo. Thought you would. You must have one. It's alright.
Here's the sad thing though, is that you know what? I'm normally one of those people, I don't mind when we schedule the show. Like if you notice the way I do my podcast, because I don't do them live as well, I just schedule them based around whenever like people are free, you know, I don't put like a hard time on it. But if there was ever a week that we could have actually nailed our original day and starting time, you know, this Tuesday at around 11:30 p.m. at CET was about an hour and a half after all that shit dropped about MIBR and Liquid, all those rumors.
I know.
People would have been so hard to watch that show.
Mate, it happens it just happens all the time now. I'm convinced, by the way, like we are getting fucking played. Some of the shit I've seen where players like just make some major announcement like 1 hour after our show. It's like I guess it's how they get back at us. So it's fair enough. The hate
so much bullshit to talk about on this one, though. So much.
Oh,
bullshit.
I know. I'm going to get straight into it. This show, obviously, brought to you in association with Rivalry.gg, who sponsor the YouTube channel. Go to rivalry.gg/RLS to support the channel. You'll qualify for up to $350 of VIP bonuses if you do that. And let's just let's get the events out. Out of the way, because we had the Season 8 ESL final sort of sandwich between shows, so it's now been quite a while, and there's some interesting storylines obviously that come through to talk about, but I guess let's just start by talking about Team Liquid. The curse again, they get through, you know, they had some very, very solid wins, but they just cannot beat Astralis to get the big one under their belt, and they live in this twilight right now where it's like, for me, I'd probably say, all things considered, Liquid for me, I put them ahead of Na'Vi. I think that's fair to say they are the number 2 team in the world right now. But the distance between Liquid and Astralis when they play each other is just so apparent. And I don't even know what you can do. It's like, if there are teams out there, like when MSL famously did this, who just prepared to beat Astralis and just went and broke down all of the Astralis demos, so like they just knew everything they were going to do, everybody has the option to do that, right? But even when they do that, they still can't beat Astralis. So it's like, it is an insane gap between 1 and 2 right now, probably the biggest I've seen in a while. And Astralis have, you know, en route now to getting into fucking ninjas in pajamas levels of dominance. It's that ridiculous. So let's just talk a little bit about this Liquid run. I mean, I guess the players will obviously be miserable that they couldn't overcome this hurdle yet again. But honestly, I just think where Astralis are compared to everyone else, this is pretty much about as good as you can expect. So it was actually a pretty good tournament for Liquid, even making it to the final, especially given some of the caliber of the teams they beat en route, including a very comprehensive win over Na'Vi, where they made them look like clowns.
Well, the thing that makes this one the most depressing of all the ones that Team Liquid's been unable to win against Astralis is, like you say, except for Astralis, what a fucking amazing tournament this was. Like, when they got to the playoffs, they were just rocking Na'Vi and MIBR like they're shit. Literally treating those teams like they're garbage. I think those teams got like 10 rounds combined against Team Liquid. Like, it was absolute dominance. It's just that, yeah, as you say, against Astralis, it's like, it doesn't matter how many times you run that final back. It just... As much as it shouldn't be possible, it feels as though Team Liquid can't win. And sadly, even they seemingly have reached that conclusion and believe it themselves. So, like, I think this was, like, what I think makes this so tough is because Team Liquid don't ever get the big tournament win, they never get, like, the full closure of people finally realizing how sick this team is. Because if you go back in time and think of any of the teams anyone's going to say are better than them in history, so Cloud9 who won the Boston Major, or go back to maybe even the old Cloud9, the one that had the win over SK in Brazil at Pro League 4 seasons before that, or something along those lines. Like, these teams didn't have to play fucking Prime Astralis in the final. These teams had, you know, still very good opponents, but teams you could beat, teams you could have a good day and defeat. For whatever reason, it seems like it doesn't matter what day of the week Team Liquid and Astralis play, Team Liquid can never beat them. And even worse, this is probably the roughest part, Astralis never play bad against them. Like, even Astralis can play bad against teams. It's just they never do it against Team Liquid. So, for whatever reason, this is a matchup that's, like, just destined to never work out for Team Liquid. And this especially has to be the killer, because not only is
this 4 or 5 finals now.
I think they've played 5 finals against us along those lines.
And lost them all. I mean, I'm trying to think of a rivalry in terms of, like, Team 1 and Team 2 in the history of CS:GO that has been that one-sided. And again, I would imagine you would have to go back to like NIP Very games, maybe. Like I think it's just unbelievable, like how you say there's obviously something inherent to the matchup that Liquid can never overcome. I mean, I'll still say there's definitely a mentality element at play. I'll always believe that about Team Liquid. They definitely seem susceptible to being afraid a little bit of every time they see Astralis come up, in these tournaments. But I mean, 5-0 in finals, like fucking yikes and a half.
Especially because, put it in the context that you go and look at all the other teams who've either currently been contenders or were in contention this year. All of them at some point in time have beaten Astralis except Team Liquid. Navi's done it a few times. FaZe even did it recently. Remember, FaZe did it at that, like, I think it was the Chicago event. They did it in the group stage. So what's bizarre is these other teams who are just conclusively not as good as Team Liquid, and they're not even close to like as consistently epic and like getting them any fat. Even these teams do it. So yeah, unfortunately, it's just one of those ones where something about the stylistic aspect. I can't get past the mental aspect of it, because when you can literally beat every other team in the world. Remember, this is a team that they just thrashed Na'Vi and MIBR. They smashed FaZe when they got to those last two maps when they were in Chicago. They've proven they can beat every other team in the world. They just can't beat the one team that is Astralis, and no one else ever does them a favor and beats Astralis before they get to the final.
Yeah, and I think as well, though, it's one of those things where it's like, if they could have just got the one win over them, if they could just do it, you then think the sky is the limit for
this
the
one.
roster,
even
right?
would have been the killer, remember, because you could have denied them the Grand Slam. It would have been so much more sort of like impactful as a revenge move if you could have won this one. They were on Danish soil, That's why I said this one was like primed to be the one where actually you say fuck all the history and we finally get our first big win, but no.
Well, and then, I mean, we can sort of segue into what you alluded to right at the top of the show. Perhaps we don't even see if this roster gets another chance to beat Astralis, right? Because I think it's interesting. I hope people realize, people always say that it's just two old cunts talking about CS, which obviously is partially true. Sam gets a buyout from that. He's safe. But we did, I brought this up, I want to say 3 episodes ago or around about then, where I was saying, I'm not saying it's possible, but what if you took Taco out of Team Liquid and put him in with MIBR, and that would fix MIBR, and then maybe Liquid get to bring somebody else in, and that's one way you could sort of refresh the roster. Well, this is what's been touted, and it sort of came out from completely left field. It was reported 5 days ago, December the 11th. MIBR, who we'll talk about in a moment. I mean, I think MIBR, again, strange time to be committing to roster changes. This is like as good as you've looked with this lineup at 2 events now. But they're talking about bringing in Taco, who I think is completely vindicated as a player, by the way. What he's done since he's moved to Team Liquid and how essential he's been to that team. All the people who were kind of doubting his efficacy as a support player, as a versatile player, I think he's completely vindicated himself. I think it's incredibly hard to criticize him. And there was a lot of people who were when he moved away from the Brazilian lineup, everyone was saying, great, good, that's good. He had to go. He's been a problem for a while. And of course, you can see what the alternatives look like, with this kind of nightmare clusterfuck that Brazil lineups have all been forced into. But this is where it gets really interesting. So you take Taco is reputedly leaving Team Liquid. Stewie 2K moving from MIBR to Team Liquid. So, and the Zeus, the coach as well, which we'll get to. But just this idea of Stewie 2K moving to Liquid, I think this is a move you've talked about before. And I don't know about it. This feels like the same mistake MIBR made when they brought Stewie 2K in the first time. They weren't thinking about balance or roles. They were just thinking about names on paper. And I don't know. I mean, Stewie 2K, he might think this is a great move for him. The idea of like Stewie and Twists and Elige all on the same team, I think the balance is completely off. I don't know about it. So fuck it, let's get into it. If the move does indeed go ahead, it's not set in stone yet, but it has been reported by very reliable sources. HLTV even picked it up. I definitely think MIBR are getting the better deal.
My read on this is very simply that MIB are the ones pushing this, and that MLB are the ones who wanted this, and that Team Liquid are just the ones who just like they kind of have to take their end of the deal. You know, it's like if you're one of those people on the other end of the old French shuffles. Yeah, you take whoever's left over because you have to have some players, and they're probably kicking out some decent players, but you'd rather have kept the amazing player that went from your team to their team. So anyone who's looking at this from the side of like, what are Team Liquid doing? Idiots! Like, don't you know how good Taco is? Why would you? No, I don't think Team Liquid's doing this move at all. I think what happens is they're in a scenario where Taco and Zeus probably want to do that aspect of the move. I could believe that. I told you, I've seen them hanging around the MIBR players all year long. Like, I've seen that. Well, some of those connections with certain players from MIBR were never severed. Like, I actually think that's why earlier this year you had that leaked move where perhaps Cold Zero could have been in Team Liquid. Same reason. I think Cold Zero saw the problems they had in MIBR and was like, I wanted to stay with Taco. I think Zeus is a good coach, you know. So there was always that like temptation there. On the Team Liquid side of the equation, if you lose Taco, you don't really have many choices anyway in that point in time. Obviously, MIBR needs to start offloading the NA players if they're going to go and do this drastic movement back to the Brazilian lineup. So if you're Team Liquid, you'll do what you can with it. But when I said like they should potentially think of a Stewie Tute type player, it wasn't this move though. I wouldn't have wanted Taco out there. I would have thought Stewie Tute instead of one of the other names, instead of Elige or instead of Nap, whichever one you want to pick, one of those ones. And the reason why is not in isolation because any of those players lack anything. I think they're very skilled players, but I do think stylistically, that's the one criticism I probably have for Team Liquid. I think stylistically, they didn't have sort of like either in terms of in-game, a very aggressive player as a star player. And I also think they didn't have a player whose mentality was kind of like, fuck these guys, we're going to beat them, like I'm going to carry the game. They had a lot of like too many similar personalities, as it were. So for me, pick one of the stars, trade him up for a Stu 2K type individual, if not Stu 2K. That's a move I would have gone for. Because I definitely don't buy the angle like that. Yeah, as you say, that Taco in any way has been shown to be a flawed player. Like, this is one angle that I guess fits both ends of this, is there are people to this day who still say support player, the role doesn't exist, the type of player doesn't exist, it's just a story people give to excuse bad players. Then how do you explain Taco the player? Because if you go and watch a POV of Taco the player, he has nowhere near the mechanical skill of almost any top pros that are at his level. Go and look through the other top teams, and except for Na'Vi with Edward and some of the famous sort of ones that get pointed out for being not very good, there's no one who he's better than individually. But you see the impact he has now had on two totally different cores of teams, made them extremely good cores. And success, quite frankly, has followed this guy around, not necessarily with the teams he's left. So going on the other end of the equation, I can't believe, like, the NA scene is a perfect example of, like, there's a saying, I assume it's a famous quote, I don't know where it's from, that the League of Legends guy LS always gives me, because he thinks it's a great quote for North America in esports, which is that they'd rather be ruined by praise than, like, it's a pithy line of, like, ruined by praise rather than, like, I don't know, improved by criticism or something like that, you know? Stu 2K is a perfect example of this, because I saw all these people who were saying, like, you know, there's no reason Stu 2K can't do everything Taco can do and more. You know, like, it's not even about that. You know, he's like, it's about, like, once you adapt to a role, you can do it. And obviously he's a better player than Taco. I don't buy that angle whatsoever. For me, players like Taco bring something very unique to a team. As long as they're not absolutely shit and throwing the whole game away, their mentality is so rare, so thin on the ground to have players who really will sacrifice everything like that, can carry the water, pull the hard yards, all the cliches, you know. I don't see someone like Stu 2K as that player, quite frankly. Like, I think in MIBR, if him and Tarek really had been consigned to those roles, then it was a stupid move by MIBR, in my opinion. So I'm very skeptical of this move overall. I know because people see Team Liquid getting in the finals and losing, they're using this angle of, well, you've got to do something. No, you don't. That doesn't make sense at all. If I have the second best team in the NFL, right, should I just trade one of my star players for an average player? Well, no, why would I do that? Why would I make our team worse? Yeah, but you got to do something to change and win. Yeah, not do something worse. Like, I have to do something that has a logical sense to be better, right?
So this is where it gets interesting to me, because I read the article you did where you were talking about Stewie abandoning Cloud9, and you know, I have a little bit of a disagreement with some of it, not all of it, but. You know, for me, you know, because I talked about this, and you know, I wrote an article basically saying I think Stewie made the right move for long-term career development. But I almost think it's the other way around. I almost think like Cloud9 like sort of abandoned Stewie to a certain degree because we all know how it went down with Stewie evidently, if you believe rumors behind the scenes, he was like, I can't go through another fucking stressful final with Skadoodle on the team, and it was like he wanted to start calling the shots on the roster and the type of players he wanted to play with. Well, we know Cloud9. That's there is a weird sentimentality when it creeps into these roster moves. So I kind of feel Stewie was a little bit shortchanged. Now, what I would say is I think he's realized, what in his mind was going to be a great move for him, playing with guys like Fallen and stuff, which he publicly said he's looked up to Fallen and wants to learn from him. I think he's realized that even the best have their idiosyncrasies, even the best have their flaws, and that there are definitely going to be like issues when you, who wants to be the best, you have a concept about how you want to play, how you want to change the game. When you have to fit into a system that maybe doesn't play to your strengths, this is what happens. And like Stewie has looked the shadow of himself since he's been to MIBI. He's very rarely had those Stewie 2K games. And I think that's a failing for him, but I also think it's a failing for Fallen. I think Fallen has played with a core for a long, long time. He's got very comfortable with having certain players who can just drag you single-handedly through games like coldzera. And it's like I said, I think Fallen has lost a little bit of his mojo. Undoubtedly one of the greatest in-game leaders of all time. But I think, when he got a completely new player, culturally different, someone he's never played with before, this young explosive breakout talent, he didn't know how to use him. The last time he had to do something like this was when he brought coldzera into the team. And he was a kingmaker for coldzera. Stewie 2K comes with his own ideas, his own mind. He's not beholden to you. So I think this was one of the fundamental problems. Now, if Stewie then decides to move to Team Liquid, by the way, for me, completely the wrong move. Because Team Liquid, that is a team full of egos. If Stewie thinks he's going to go in there and get his own way, well, let me introduce you to Elige. Let me introduce you to Twists. Let me introduce you to Naf. All players notoriously, historically, for having very set in their ways attitudes, big egos. I don't know in terms of just personality balance how Stu can go in there like a big swinging dick and fucking think he's going to get his own way. I mean, I think he's going to find himself in the exact same situation he was in an MIBR, which is you're the new kid. This is how we do things here. Get used to it. I think he's potentially going from one nightmare to another.
My biggest problem with Stewie 2K is this. It's like you can't have it all your way. Whatever you choose in life, there will then be a resultant consequence and people will view you through the lens of that choice. You can't have it so that everyone must love you and agree with like 4 different narratives which are mutually exclusive. So here's the problem I have with that scenario, right? Is the reason why Stewie 2K abandoned Cloud9 is because he had just signed a multi-year contract with them for the highest salary in North America after winning a major, and then he chose to leave, right? So when he then leaves, he is, whether it implicitly or explicitly, showing you he does not believe Cloud9 can win, because you're the reigning major champions. If you believe they can win and you've just signed up with them, you stick around. So when he then says in that statement that he's leaving, like, I believe they can win trophies and they're really good, you're full of shit. You are absolutely full of shit because you wouldn't leave them. Secondly,
well, do you think though, just to tag onto that, do you think there was something intimated? Like, so again, from my understanding, I thought that maybe everybody thought Skadoodle was going to retire after the major. And then he just decided, right? So when we did the No Majors Club,
go on.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, when we did the No Majors Club, and so obviously it comes from Mo, take it with a pinch of salt. But I mean, one thing I've always believed about with Mo is he gets all the gossip and stuff from NA. Apparently, Skadoodle had said, "I'm going to retire after the major." Then they won the major. Then he just decided to stick around like a bad smell. And Stewie was like, "I'm not doing this. Like, definitely not." And then the Cloud9 basically sided with Skadoodle of all things. So, I mean, do you think that maybe makes it different or then justifies the choice?
Let's move on to narrative number 2. Narrative number 2 is Skadoodle's a bad player, right?
Agreed, yeah.
No, you're wrong, Richard. That's not what Stewie 2K thinks. Have you ever been back to when I used to criticize Skadoodle? Stewie 2K is one of the players who thinks I was full of shit and Skadoodle's really good. So which is it? Is he really good, or do you want him out of your fucking team after you just won the world championship? Kind of both ways.
I can understand players.
Skadoodle's really good. I want him as a teammate. Stop criticizing him. Then you win the world championship. Well, I can't stay here. You've got him in the team, haven't you? Which is it?
Well, so I understand players though.
Lying.
Yeah.
I just call it out as lying, mate. That's weird, isn't it? I think that all works out. We've all had our cake and fucking eating, haven't we? There we go.
But so I mean, what do you think of Stewie on a roster with players like Elige and Naf, you know, and guys that have historically had these egos, man? I mean, like I just don't see how Stewie gets back to being the old Stewie 2K, because he's never going to get the plum roles, you know?
The key for me is who the coach ends up being, because obviously they've lost the coach. So if they get the right coach that looks at these players and figures out how to reformulate the team, I could see it being a good team. My thing is this. I think Stewie's got the mentality where he could come in and take one of those guys' spots. Like I said, they're all fucking like super chill people. It's actually depressing if you ever see that team, because they're such a good team in the game, but then like, they're not a team that I feel as though has like strong like bonds between players and stuff. In some senses, they're professionals in that sense. You know, they go in the game, they play the game, and then they do whatever the fuck they want. So I could see Stewie having the drive to be someone who could push to get a key element in the game. Problem is, because you've lost Taco, you have to reformulate the squad anyway. You can't just insert him in Taco's roles and play the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you on that front.
Also, by the way, I referenced this in the article. A lot of people missed it because, again, most people don't have any inside sources to the team, obviously. So every idiot's going to tell me I'm wrong because they read an interview or heard someone on stream contradict this. But I have sources within Cloud9 and other teams that told me over the years that Stewie 2K was one of the people stopping players coming to Cloud9. He was one of the people actively preventing talent joining Cloud9. So again, when he then chooses to leave right after signing a massive deal, don't have a lot of sympathy for that. It's like, are you just a little tyrant who just gets to do it? Are you Lord Fultroy? You just get to have everything your way all the time? No.
Well, I think probably what happened was I think the major was kind of like an awakening point, right? Like I think Stewie has a completely different mindset. I think, funnily enough, if Cloud9 hadn't won the major and then decided to stick with Skadoodle and what was now, you know, becoming in his mind a roster that would plateau, I think if they'd gone out roughly where we expected Cloud9 to go out in that major, Stewie 2K is probably still at that team. That roster's probably still together. And it's the madness. It's
well, remember, if about 10 people just didn't say no to fucking MIBI, I'd still be in Cloud9.
Well, yeah, true.
There's that one as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course, like, it's easy to forget, isn't it, that it was very nearly Simple and Flamey instead of Stewie and Tarek, right? So yeah, and then let's talk about Zeus. Obviously, Zeus, the coach. We've always sung his praises on this broadcast. You know, he's the Brazilian coach that doesn't have Tinder, for anyone who's curious. But definitely
the successful one. Either way you want to cut it off.
yeah. I mean, either way. For me, the second best coach, probably active in CS:GO. And it's always hard to gauge a coach's success because you don't see what goes on behind the scenes. But I don't think it's any coincidence. Again, you know, we talked about Taco, how success follows him around. Well, success has followed Zeus around for sure. And it to me a strange one, because I'm guessing Zeus probably is relishing the opportunity to move to an all Brazilian lineup again, hook up with Fallen again, you know, someone who he'd worked with previously in his career, and what it looks like now is, obviously, I mean, if MIBR continue to go on the upward trajectory they've been on, obviously Zeus is going to get a lot of plaudits. But I just don't see the upside for Team Liquid in letting him go. Seems to me that is a crazier decision than letting Taco go.
Well, I mean, I made a tweet about this earlier this week, Rich, because this is one of the topics that's on my mind. Is like, this is where it's one of those topics where I don't even want to bring it up, because while I'll naively think, oh, there must be someone in the community who has a great take on this, every comment will just be the stupidest take of all time. So the take people have is this, right, Rich, which is, yeah, but if you tell someone who's under contract and says they want to leave, that they can't leave because they're under contract, then they'll just play badly and sabotage the whole team.
Yeah,
like,
I've read that.
What an outrageous premise to think is just as an acceptable statement. Like, the point I'm making is this. If you're someone like Cloud9 you're someone like Team Liquid, and you have the resources, the backing with some of these people, you have history, you've had success with them, etc. First of all, they shouldn't even be asking to leave, because you should be able to sell them on your vision of like, no, the reason you don't want to leave is because I'll make the roster moves we need to make to get us back in position. Or what's that? We're number 2 at the moment, right? Tell me who you want as a star player. Tell me who you want as a support player. Like, you know, I'll go out. It's quite basically you sell them on the idea of like, why leave and have to start over when I can just get a piece here, and if as long as you believe in my vision, there's no reason to go, right? So Team Liquid's failed categorically on those grounds if they couldn't keep Zeus here, considering the team he's joining is worse than Team Liquid. I agree with you. To him, he'll be seeing the romance of if I can take them back to the top again, people will finally acknowledge what I did in that squad, you know. I agree. If you're Team Liquid, there's no way this guy should be leaving. Just like if you're Cloud9, there's no way Stu K should have left your team. So my angle on it is this. Like, I agree. This is where I feel like people are getting caught between two scenarios. So you have esports at the moment where, sure, a player's so young, he could just be an arsehole and sabotage your whole team because you won't let him go. Then there's the angle, which is like on a top NFL, NBA level. If you're a superstar player and you request a trade, yes, they'll usually grant it because they want to just like get, like, they figure, right, you're not here for the future, you're not committed, so let's just get this done as quickly as possible, make it as painless for everyone and all move on, right? But there's a bit between that no one's stopping and thinking about. You think there's not some guy who's on an NFL or an NBA team who's like the 9th best player who goes, you know what, I'd like to move, and they go, we've looked into the possibilities, we didn't get any good offers, and so we're going to say no. And then he goes, right, well, I'm just going to sabotage everything, fuck everyone here. No, that guy just goes and plays and does his job and goes, you know what, this isn't the year I can move on. This is a year where I have to prove myself. Yeah, even call it a fucking contract year where you plan on leaving a year from now and you just play as well as you can while you're getting into free agency. So there has to be a middle ground in these scenarios. Like,
no, but like, people are so fucking stupid. This is what I wish right. You've got the perfect counter argument to your stupid fucking premise in front. It's right under your nose. He's called Simple. He's only the best fucking player in the world, right? I mean, 2 times in 2018, he was meant to be out the door on Na'Vi. 2 times, right? So why hasn't he sabotaged his own career and sabotaged the team? That motherfucker's single-handedly dragging cunts to fucking finals. He's got to carry fucking Zeus on his back like some fat fucking Ukrainian Yoda, right? Like, that's how he's living, right? So how does your argument fucking hold up? It doesn't, does it?
Well, so especially because here's the angle that people don't take on that, which I don't get, is the scenario in which, okay, you'd have to transfer the player, would be one in which the star player of the NFL franchise, right, wants to leave because the franchise has gone to shit, and he's like, right, I don't want to be here anymore, transfer me, right? The reason you move that guy is because he's 100% out the door. He's not going to come back, and there's no point trying to win him over. In this scenario, it's not like Team Liquid is fucking the current Cloud9 lineup and someone's choosing to leave. No. If you choose to stay, you're still on an amazing team. You still got loads of opportunities. You still have a chance to win. Like, the actual secondary option, if you say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to let you leave now, I'll let you have like, if you say to them, you know what, I'll let you have another say in 6 months, give us 6 more months. It's not like it's a terrible scenario you stay in. You still got a great situation. So if in those situations the pro player actually was like, I'm going to fuck this whole team over and not do it, you know what, I'm not lying as an org. I'd publicize that. I'd make sure that gets out there in the scene, publicly and privately, and you have now tanked your own career. So that angle never made sense. So I agree with you. It's baffling to me that these owners, I mean, I know why it is. It's because, unfortunately, esports right now is in this really weird position where actually, in terms of tangible leverage, players have next to none. But in terms of like public perception, they have all the leverage. And so as a result, no org wants to be the org where the player might publicly badmouth you and be like, oh, I don't want to be here. They're making me stay here. But I think it's fucked up because the amount of salaries some of these people are getting paid. And then the idea is, doesn't matter what contract they're under, they're just allowed to be, I don't want to be here anymore. Why are you signing contracts then? Why are you committing on paper to be with me for 2 or 3 years if you're going to leave?
Well, I mean, look,
you can't build a team this way. You can't plan a franchise this way.
But put it this way: there's more examples of players sticking around and having to ride it out. Like, generally, it goes one or two ways. It goes, look, you are contracted. You've got a buyout. We'll let you go if anyone meets it. But the nature of buyouts are they're generally unreasonably high to deter people just buying people out of their contracts. Or we stick you in the fucking contract gulag and you are now a streamer. You know, that's like the 2 ways it usually pans out. I can't think of a time where I've even suspected a play, and I've seen plenty of opportunity. I've heard plenty of rumors where players have said privately, like, I'm just not going to play. Like, okay, make me a streamer then. Fuck it, I don't care. I'm getting a salary, whatever. I've heard about that. But I've never heard of this one where a player just fucking actually gets on the server and then goes, I will go 0 for 12 today. Like, just who's doing that? Then your own brand goes down and you don't get the move you fucking wanted. So,
well, that reminds me, Rich. Do you remember?
It's a faulty premise, you know.
That was the conspiracy theory that absolutely desperate at the end of their fucking rope Brazilian fans had to use for why SK suck dick at the end of their time. Was like, maybe they're just sandbagging until they go to MIBR, then they'll be really good. Yeah, about that. Yeah. I'm still waiting. When are they going to get rid? Oh, there's another angle as well, Rich, that tilts me. Another narrative that I can't handle. So Stewie2K and Tarek, none of their fault. Remember, no one's fault in MIBR when everything goes badly. The team clearly isn't that great because they made like one notable international final. That's it. They haven't won any massive tournaments. So they had all these problems. They clearly had problems in the team. Yet every interview was like, we love this team. We love this lineup. We're working hard. We're improving every day. And yet you as a team are now making 2 massive wholesale changes. Fuck off.
Well,
it can't be all of it. Everything can't be great, and then you make a massive move. You don't like it in that scenario.
And 2 wholesale changes where it's like we go back to having a Brazilian lineup. Let's just talk about who they could get as a coach, because like I suspect, and I will be absolutely clear here. Obviously, I'm friends with Yanko, but I've made a point of just not talking about his career because I don't think it's fair. You know, I don't think it's fair to like put him in that position, you know, within the friendship and be like, oh, hey, what you doing, you know? Because obviously we got a podcast, we might talk about it. And I just think there should be some boundaries, you know, given like what we do and what they do. I suspect that, you know, Yanko's had his period where he's been out there and he's been a coach. And like I say, I think it's ironic they're making the cuts now. You know, I would have done this. I mean, well, we told you I would have done this like 2 months ago. They've actually started to improve, and now they're going to go ahead and make the changes and probably reset everything they've achieved. But I don't see Yanko going the other way. I don't see like it hasn't even been intimated or rumored that Yanko's going to be part of this deal. It's just like Yanko's out, Zeus is in, and Liquid will have this opening for a coach. Now, I don't know who you get. I honestly don't know who you get. I think it would have to be a sort of strange one, like something we hadn't anticipated. So, for example, you know, you've noticed like Semphis is a coach over at Cloud9 now that they're saying, and Valens is going to be moving to the role that he's always kind of done anyway, which is just to be an analyst on the team. You know, so maybe they coax somebody like a Sean Gares, you know, to come over and do some coaching. That's something I could see. That's something I think actually would be very, very good. But other than that, I can't see an actual coach at the moment who, one, would be willing to leave the team they're already working for, and two, is of the suitable caliber to go to Team Liquid and help continue the work Zeus did. So maybe I'm missing something. Is there anybody that like leaps out to you?
No, I mean, I've heard from some of the Team Liquid people, some of the people they were trying, and they weren't people who were like established coaches that are already, you know, like in some other big org, have done anything in the last few years. So it's not people that like you would think. So it's going to be an out of left field move, unless, as you said, someone like a Sean Gares would be, you know, like seemingly a shoe-in because, you know, he's worked with some of these players. He's obviously from NA, and he's someone who probably brings to the table what they need, which is you need to be able to beat Astralis. So if you want some fucking demo brain in there.
Oh, it'd be straight fire. I mean, listen, I know like Sean, because he was just playing with the old guys club and whatnot, I think it is, and he was you know, like I think a part of him still wants to kind of play a little bit, but this is a guy who he's at a point in his career now where he needs to move past that. You know, like I know Sean, I really like the guy. He's got the choice where he can be a top tier, like a #1 analyst pick at every CS event in 2019, right? He can do that, or he can go and coach a high-profile team. He's got enough clout to do that. And I know he said historically he doesn't want to coach and blah, blah, blah. I think that's Sean the player talking. I think if he sits down and makes a pragmatic choice about where his career is heading, I think him going and being a coach, like, he will be able to find a lot of transference in the role of being an IGL to being a coach. It's just you don't get the cathartic release of playing at the end of it. But what you do get is the improvement, the results, the camaraderie. There's still a lot of good there. I think he's just still enamored with the idea of playing like a lot of older pros are, you know. But I think he would be a fantastic pickup as a coach. Like, there's just no doubt in my mind. But I can't think of anybody else out there really. Like, it would have to be a curveball. You know?
I've had so many teams over the last 3 years come to me and ask me who I recommend as a coach. And this is how bad the situation is. I always tell them this. Do you have the money to buy a coach from another team? If you do, I'll just give you my top list of who I think the 5 best coaches are. Go down the list, try all 5 of them. If you can get them, done. And I said, if you don't, here's like 1 or 2 people I personally can vouch for. Like, they're not, so Yankel would have been one of them in the past, where the knowledge is there. I tell them, other than that, I am not willing to even suggest a name, because the scene of players is so small that actually want to be a coach. And the majority of them are either they haven't done anything to prove they're good, or I don't even know if they could be good. Like, it's such a different role for them. So it is the most thin on the ground position in all of Counter-Strike. In fact, all of esports.
Well, I also think as well, organize, and this is a tangential discussion, which I won't clog up the episode because I know we're going to hard out. So, but you know, I also think as well that a lot of people have so many misconceptions, you know, on an organizational level of what a coach does and what a coach is expected to do. I mean, again, it tells you all you need to know. Like, we bang on him on every episode; it's his own fucking fault. But fuck it, you know. Like, Peacemaker's the prime example. Like, I don't know what you have to do to sort of get cast out and be told, like, seriously, you got to go back to the bush leagues and show me something. You know, if somebody like him can just consistently fail upwards and keep walking into jobs, like, it just shows that people don't even understand what a good coach is supposed to be doing.
His example,
what the metric for success is as a coach, you know? His
example is very, very reminiscent of like the early days of esports, the first 10 years, because what would happen was, the reason why we had that joke that in esports you fail upwards is because every time you fail at a big high-profile job, well, when the next big high-profile job comes up and they're trying to recruit someone who has experience, no one else, because there's no more experience to have. So what's mad is you will keep getting hired in the same way as if they fire some football manager who's for a top Premier League team. Doesn't matter if he was absolute shit when he got fired. He's just been the coach of a massive Premier League club. Some mid-table club's definitely going to give a shot to him, because they're going to go, hey, he's got experience. He's worked with top teams. It's like, until you get an abundance of really high-quality people, you can just pick from people you know are good. Just having experience, no matter how shit it might appear from outside, will be a factor that will go in your favor. So sadly for coaching, that's why I see them just recycling the same names over and over again. And at the moment, I don't know how long it's going to be, but there still has not been that breaking point where the people who should be the coaches finally say, I'll stop playing and become a coach.
Yeah. So I'm going to watch that with interest, because Team Liquid, you know, they've relied on Zeus for a long, long time. I
think this is terrible for Team Liquid. It's depressing. They had one of their best teams ever. They had a team where you looked at a lot of these pieces and you said, right, keep the majority of these together and you could be a great team going years from now. This just gives you a chance of being worse. It's depressing.
Okay, so let's talk about another thing. Again, we were pretty on point with some of our assessments and thoughts about roster moves.
By the way, one thing to mention here.
Yeah, jump in, man.
Because this is key, because it was related to the MIBR aspect. The second I saw that news that said MIBR's trying to get Zeus and Taco, and then they also plan to remove Taric for an as yet unnamed 5th player. I didn't even need to wait the hour, Richard, until DK leaked the news of who that player might be, to immediately realize that the written apology to me and others by KNG was almost certainly not written by him and completely disingenuous and on fraudulent grounds. And I'm almost certain he, to this day, has no intention to ever have apologized to me whatsoever. That just seems fake as fuck, quite frankly.
Yeah. Actually, I'm glad you brought this up, man. Let's do it.
By the way, he can do it. That's fair enough. It's one thing he can do if he wants to publicize that way, but it doesn't seem very genuine, does it? In that timing, like the timing.
No. Well, so like, because you know, I got a good sense for this stuff as well. I did a tweet when I saw KNG's apology. Sam, I don't know if you can get the apology and bring it up. It's just a twit longer. But you know, so when I saw it, I thought, oh, he's got a team, because there's no reason now heading into 2019 to have made that apology. In fact, almost by making such a fucking delayed apology after you've doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down, saying you'll never apologize, you're just stirring it up again. I think the community and everyone have just accepted, okay, you are content to be a cunt, and that's fine. Like, there's plenty of them. You know, we've all done it. We all start, you know, like, I have no issue with KNG standing by the position saying, I will never apologize. Like, in your mind, if you believe you've got nothing to apologize for, don't apologize. You know, like I can totally accept and respect that. And as we've said on the broadcast many times, he seemed content to self-sabotage. I don't think the homophobic joke he made at your expense is the worst fucking thing in the world. I don't think he shouldn't have a career because of it. I don't think he should be on Naughty Player Island. One thing I want to correct here.
I mean, it's another example of where people have continually misrepresented my position and just outright lied. So, for example, people say I asked for him to be fired. I didn't. I, in fact, on the same day, tweeted that.
On the same day, said, exactly.
I even privately contacted him and tried to persuade him to basically just like put it right so it wouldn't be an issue. Let me just be very clear about this. I don't even consider his joke like overtly homophobic. I don't think he actually intended it that way. I think that in Brazil, first of all, they have a very different take on all those subjects. And secondly, it was the equivalent of, in a way, when people are like, wow, why do you keep saying Device is so good? You suck his dick. Well, by that logic, that's homophobic. But not really. Like, I know they don't really mean that. But my point in that scenario, and the reason why I made that as the banter back to KNG, is because if you are someone who is presenting yourself as my enemy, and you, as Brazilians themselves have gone out of their way to do, are going to go and do as unfavorable a reading of what I say as possible, there's an example of what happens if someone does it to you. And what do you know? It's not fun, is it? It just fucks. It's like that great comment. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Well, guess what? Yeah. You did exactly what I did. And when you got fucked over, you didn't like it, did you? Now, I wasn't even the one who fucked you over, but still it's my fault. So I don't take any of the... I don't want to let anyone gaslight me on that one. A guy said a stupid joke to me. I told him, basically, I wouldn't say a joke in that way because it could be implied this way. He then doubled down, fucked his own career in the face, and me being stood on the sideline somehow means I'm the one who pushed him, was it? I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, remember, right, apparently, if you follow the argument... Right, because you made a joke about, like somebody, it was like Fallen or somebody had tweeted saying, you know, there was loud music and the smell of weed coming out of this hotel room that we were next to, so we didn't get a good night's rest. And you said, yeah, they fucked up and put you next to Immortals rooms.
No, it was worse than that, Richard. I said, they gave you 100 Thieves room, which, by the way, even carries the implication you're not the one smoking the weed and doing the music. I was clever enough to put one layer of abstraction. By the way, I'll go ahead and give you the spoiler. That was the joke. But guess what? Do you have any idea how the law works? I would be like 100% legal, plausible deniability all over the place on that, dumb fucks. That's what I've never understood. You do realize if you can't catch me, if you can't prove I've broken a rule, you can't then go, well, I know in my brain he must have wanted to break a rule, so off to jail you go. It's like, luckily, the fucking due process doesn't work that way, guys.
But so why he then has to make?
No, he had to, Richard. I absolutely baited it out. I knew he was going to.
But I got it as well. Like, and my tweet to him, if you go back historically and look, is you should probably delete this, brother, because people will get pissed off. Like, and I've done this many times with many players because. You know, there's one thing I never want to be privy to, and that is like stirring up the outrage mob. Right now, if it's one of these fucking journalist types, like that Newsweek journalist who was going after you, and then you go back in his old tweets in his career, and look, a bunch of homophobic slurs. Who knew? It's almost as if all these fucking virtue signaling journalists are a bunch of hypocritical fucks. Danny O'Dwyer, all these cunts. You know, they've all got skeletons in their closet, which is why they're the loudest pricks. Walk around with a megaphone, going, "I am woke." You know, like fuck these assholes, right? But so they're fair game in my mind. But I don't want players to get fucking crucified because of a cultural misunderstanding or heat of the moment tweets. Like KNG is a fantastically talented player. I never wanted him on the sidelines. I said it. I never wanted his career to be over. I wanted him to apologize to FNS. You know what he did was wrong. He should have, he should have had some punitive measures taken against him. I said if DreamHack had banned him for a year, that would have been more than enough for me. right? Like, definitely. But instead, you had this weird situation where, like, people just dogpiled on him and then turned around and said, "Oh, we're only doing it though because of Thorin and Richard Lewis. Like, it's their fault. But we're privy to the dogpiling because they riled us up and made us do it." And it's like, wait, so we get blamed for baiting him out and making him do the stupid thing, and your behavior too? What the fuck, guys? Like, who are we? Fucking master of puppets? Like, so that was ridiculous. But then, yeah, this apology. As soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, he's got a team then. Because it's just so transparent, like, says, oh, swallow. And again, so well written, ticking all the boxes, getting everything apart. Yeah, it absolutely reeks of Noah Winston. Like, 100% it does. Keep in mind, I'm pretty sure Noah Winston has ghostwritten many a PR statement for other organizations in that little NA.
And think about this, Richard, because here's a key thing. I even said this at the time. You can go back, watch the shows. I never actually, it's not like fucking the beginning of Blade Runner and I'm going to hook like KNG up to an advanced system that's going to check whether he actually does apologize. No, all he ever had to do was let fucking Noah Winston write this apology and then just put it on his Twitter account and swallow his pride for the fact that he didn't actually believe it. He never in his brain, I'm not convicting him of thought crime. He never had to actually believe that he was apologetic or that what he did was wrong. He could have done this from day one. So think what the implication there is, Richard. You think they didn't offer him this in Immortals? Like, you know what, we'll take care of this for you. We'll write up an apology for you. All you do is tweet it. I'm going to go ahead and speculate. This guy actively told them he wouldn't do it and that he would not apologize. And that it's not until he's literally gone to rock bottom and he's realized he's never coming back. And that they coupled with this bizarre scenario you could have never predicted, which is that the #1 team in Brazilian history desperately needs some Brazilian player who can come and play for them. That all coupled together has now meant, as you say, at the very last, like at the 11th hour, he's decided, yeah, you know what, I'll just sell out completely. Go ahead and write that. It's like, well, why now of all times?
Yeah, but this is where it gets also mega interesting because now the reports are implying that, maybe KNG isn't going to be in MLBR. Like, let's also just remember historically, one of the fundamental problems with KNG's career wasn't that he was just a fucking hothead, thug wannabe, right? It was that he had fucking visa issues. So none of that changes. And unless you've got a team of crack fucking lawyers that can get him through the loopholes that 100 Thieves couldn't get him through before, that Immortals couldn't get him through before, unless organizationally you are able to do something different, you're going to have all of the same problems with KNG as a fucking international player. So this apology, which I agree, it looked like, look, we want to get you in the team. We got to start laying the foundations for that move now. First thing we got to do is get you cleared in the eyes of the community and the eyes of fucking the fans. And plus as well, Noah Winston's fucking pride takes a massive hit, doesn't it? When this is the guy who said, these people will never play for a representative Immortals again. Fuck. Yeah, now we need you to bail us out.
When everyone's like, he's like, I said Immortals, not MIBR.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
There's the thing. No one's like, he's not. I don't know if he's above using some like semantic argument like that. Well, you're right for the Immortals organization, but I view MIBR as a separate project with different cultural norms. And
well, it's not even that. Obviously, the statement that he'll put out on one of his little fucking self-serving videos for the community, where it's like, hey everyone, I'm the important person here. He'll do a video where he'll basically say KNG has demonstrated some incredible personal growth over, and it's like
the video will start like this, right? First of all, he'll be sat there like me when they look like me when I was 12, basically. Sat there and go, here at Immortals, we have certain core cultural values that represent us as an organization. It's like he always starts with some bullshit like that and leads you in. And it's like, what's great is you think you're getting transparency. You get just pure smoke and mirrors the whole way. Like at the end, you're did I even find anything out there? And he's like, so that's why we will continue to fight for your best interests. Vote for me in 2020. Like, what do you want to use this shit?
No gods, man. But yeah, so now, I mean, like, all I'll say is what we can glean from this is KNG was definitely in the frame for the MIBR move.
By the way, whose fucking dog did Phelps kill? Phelps, I don't know what you did, homie.
Well, no, you are
public enemy #1. You just can't get into these teams.
Well, it was clearly Fallen's. The rumors are now is that they're looking at Phelps.
Why wasn't he the first choice?
Well, I don't know, but I mean, again, look, imagine speculation, wild speculation time. Obviously, I think KNG, it was going to be Taco and KNG probably, right? And then they were linked with some other kid whose name escapes me temporarily.
Caserato, I think his name was.
Yeah, Caserato, that's it, Caserato. And then it was like, oh, well, we're not going to go with a kid. We'll go with KNG. Oh, wait, KNG still got them visa problems. Now Phelps. It's like there's this weird, you know, they're doing the same thing they did before where they're literally going down a list. It's a checklist. And Phelps has finally come up again. So you're definitely going to see MIBR with an all-Brazilian lineup. The question just is, who's the fifth Brazilian to go alongside Taco? Phelps is in the mix now, you know? What's interesting is, you know, my thoughts on it. I think, I've said for a while, I think you still make these choices and you let Tarek and Stewie go, but you get rid of Fur as well. Like, I think Fur's been underperforming for a while, like low key. I think he's cruising by in a lot of what he did in like 2017.
That's what I love about this team. I fucking love it. Because this team has there's only one team in history I've ever seen in all of esports history that has the same quality. And it is actually the TSM League of Legends team. And what it does is it goes like this. If you play badly and they kick you, the second you get kicked, it was all your fault. You're pure shit. You should never have been able to play for that team. If you get recruited, even if you've done nothing, you're going to be amazing. Of course you are. They're geniuses. Why would they pick you up otherwise? But every time they have a lineup where on paper, they're all good. So this lineup is a great example because they've got 5 major champions. Even if you don't win, it's no one's fault. What you do collectively, it's genius, is you just agree to disperse all the blame simultaneously to everyone and yet no one. So even though I've been gaslit all year long by MIBR players, fans, coaching staff, owners, this is up until very recently, that they love this lineup. It's not a mistake. It was never a mistake. They have no regrets whatsoever. Things are all progressing forwards. Didn't you see us almost beat Astralis? Maybe next time we beat them, or maybe we'll actually be able to win the next tournament. And then what's that? First chance we have to make a move, we'll make any fucking move possible. Give us a short list of 15 people from Brazil. I'll get from 1 to 15.
I think the worst thing is...
Can't be both at the same time again. Come on.
Right. I think the worst thing is, like, when people were talking about where Tarek ends up, right? They were saying, oh, well, it's complexity. And it's like, no disrespect to complexity.
No, you made your bed, get fucked in it, as a blue-haired prophet once said.
well, true. For me, though, it's like, it's such a... You know, you start 2018 on a major winning team. You go to an expensive... high-profile project that doesn't work out, and then you end up on complexity by the end of the year. Now, I hope that's indicative of what we've been saying again on the podcast repeatedly. Complexity, you got to start spending some of this fucking Dallas Cowboys money, move away from this idea that, hey, we can develop all these young talent.
Oh, it's great for complexity side, no doubt. I just don't know why Tarek would ever want to do that move. Like, it seems like a fucking step down.
Yeah, but you just sit on the fucking bench at MIBR otherwise. Tarek's the kind of guy I'm sure he'd rather be playing for anybody rather than be on the bench. I mean, that's, you know, I've talked to Tarek a lot about stuff like this down the years, and he's a good guy. You know, remember, this was a guy who, he's almost like the inverse Shroud. He had a successful stream. You know, he was a popular streamer, No Shirt TV. You know, we all remember him when he first came on. He'd be, you know, playing with his top officer. He went into competitive CS from streaming to scratch that competitive itch. You know, it's always something he can go back to. But I think he'd rather be playing. He just loves the competitive element of it. I've always respected him for that. So I think yeah, complexity might be a climb down. Great move for complexity, and definitely, you know, I think he would come in with, you know, he'll be there with fucking Stan. You know, a good in-game leader, somebody who'll know how to use him. That's got some potential to really kick complexity up a notch if the move does go ahead. But let's talk about the other Brazilian move I was going to talk about before we went down the KNG stuff, because this is another one that we called. I've said that right now, Brazil has enough players to make a number 1 challenging roster, a top 10 roster, and a top 20, top 15 roster. But they're just all spread all over the fucking place. No one's playing with each other. All the balance is off. And one of the things we said was Luminosity were one of these teams, obviously famously with the Twins and Steel. that's really, really been struggling. And the problem player in that lineup for a long, long time has been Yell. And it's through no fault of his own. You know, for those who don't know, Yell is like a 26-year-old player. He's like a little bit older. He's been around the Brazilian scene a while, but he's also an AWPer primarily. Well, he's playing on a team with Henny, so what the fuck are you going to do, you know? Like, he basically was like a secondary AWPer, having a rifle on some maps and some setups they were doing, and it just wasn't working. He was always the problem that they really liked his personality. They really liked his attitude. He was a long-standing member of Luminosity. He had gone through various iterations, but you just couldn't make him work in a roster where you're arguably the best player. Well, not even arguably the best player on the team. The best player on the team is a primary AWPer. And that's meant to be your job. So they finally bit the bullet and decided to get him out. And they picked up Boltz, who was the other player we said would be a great move. Like, why is Boltz just floating out there in fucking cyberspace, not playing for anyone, when, again, at the start of the year, he was fucking winning tournaments, you know?
By the way, fucking shout out to KNG as well. Like, forget FNS, forget Magisk. What KNG basically did was come along, join Immortals, fuck their roster so hard that all of the roster went and just formed for a different org, and some other org just gets to benefit from all those players. Cheers. So if you're Immortals, you had a really good team, like you go in places, just because of one little prick, now you're getting all those players gone, and now they're all playing for Luminosity. Sound. No transfers even needed. But
back when I was at E-League, one of the things we were always talking about doing, which we never got round to doing while I was working there, was, you know, there's a VP over at the network, a really great guy called Matt Mosteller, who was like, you know, you met him obviously, who, you know, was responsible for a lot of our like content output and stuff. And one of the things we were always talking about doing was like 30 for 30 style documentaries based around Counter-Strike, and I storyboarded a bunch and came up with some ideas. And this was before this whole fucking Immortals 100 Thieves just nightmare. And if you think about, you know, there has never been bigger consequences for being late for a match, like ever. Like it's insane what it did. It fucked up.
It's like that fucking, you know, that famous like it's like a poem or whatever, like "but for a nail" or whatever the fuck it was called.
I know he's But it's insane, and we're only just starting to recover from that fucking, you know, decision now at the end of 2019. Like, people's careers are just getting back on track. It's madness how fucking selfish and pathetic and wide-reaching that move was. I mean, again, I've talked to Nadeshot about it with 100 Thieves, like, you know, when I've seen him at like Call of Duty events or whatever, you know, we've been having a drink, and it's like, you know, they got so fucking unlucky and having to take a backward step from an entire game because of the damage that like going.
Oh, you know what my favorite was, dude? My favorite was that 100 Thieves came along, paid out big buyouts, got all this team ready, paid them salaries, got them in position to come to the major, and cause, for whatever reason, someone's visa didn't go through. Now, by the way, none of you have any insight. You don't have any inside connections to the fucking visa office. No one knows whether it was 100 Thieves who fucked it up, if it was the person. But because of that, they then ended up not getting any tournaments out of them. And then obviously KNG did the stupid shit and ended up cutting the whole team. Now, after that, the person who gets fucked over the most there, inarguably 100 Thieves. Nah, the entire community, and obviously the dog shit Brazilian fans who just rag on everything, they all blamed 100 Thieves for that. And 100 Thieves were the ones who came out looking bad. I don't really know what 100 Thieves was supposed to fucking do in that scenario to win.
As I said, Luminosity picking up Boltz, you know, for Yell, definitely a step in the right direction for me. I don't know how much of Luminosity you've seen. You know, they've had some interesting kind of runs at like some of these lower tier tournaments or these tier 2 tournaments, I should say. You know, coming close, had some good games. It was, I mean, I still think there's a question mark around Nekiz, but I think he's young enough to kind of maybe work in the system with better players around him. But they are getting there, you know, and if Nekiz, for whatever reason, somewhere like down the line, like 3 months into 2019 gets cut from the roster and they can bring one other player in, maybe FNX comes back or something like this, I think Luminosity could be definitely a big pick to watch in 2019, a team on the come up. And, you know, they've got too much experience on this roster now, and a lot of players who, you know, they've spent most of 2018 in the last chance saloon nursing a fucking drink, wondering, you know, where their next opportunity is going to come from. And in the case of Boltz, through absolutely no fault of his own, by the way. I mean, it's not like Boltz did anything wrong, but Boltz has been a model pro the entire time, and just these seismic reverberations have completely fucked his career. But what do you think of this move on paper? How much does this kick Luminosity up in the rankings?
I mean, it's a good move. Like, if you ask me right now, obviously I'd like to see one of the Immortals lineups recreated. They were an interesting team. They were quite fun to watch. Like, the style of play was always exciting. The problem is, you look at the players they have in the team. That's the problem Immortals always had. They were a very flawed lineup. Like, they didn't have a clearly really good tactical leader. They had some good players, but those were players where, like, are they reliable? Like, as soon as you have Henny, you're already going to have issues because if he's one of your main players, he takes loads of resources and then he's just not that sick of players. You've got to be real. So if you look at them as a squad, I could absolutely see them improving. I could see them going and being like the 15th best team or something, but they're not going to be a team that's going to go and be very relevant. I mean, they haven't really got any factor to say they would. They haven't got like a superstar player, really good in-game leader. They haven't really got a whole lot or much. So I just hope they can recreate some of the magic of Immortals, like have a really fascinating playing style, everyone fit their role, seem like they have fun playing. That could all be cool. I don't really see any sort of like hype that this is going to have a trajectory to be a top team though.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, especially with the top 10 being in like, this weird state of flux. And as we've said many, many times, probably it's the weakest top 10 I've seen in a long, long while. Like, with now more roster changes on the horizon, that only becomes more and more true. I think there's definitely room for Luminosity to creep up the rankings and catch motherfuckers out, like, for sure. And, I think Bolt's coming in is going to, that old synergy that Steel and Bolts used to have. And, now obviously having all worked with Henny and Lucas, this is a core four that were a top 5 team at one point, not just a top 10 team. If you remember where they were before all the madness started happening. So this is the redemption arc, I think. And I think 2019 there's some teams that are going to be on the kind of like the come up, and I think this is going to be one of them for sure. The Neckers question notwithstanding. Now look, another big story that came out roster wise. We've been fucking saying this for ages. Oh, breathe a sigh of relief. It's finally over. Virtus Pro have said, we're just not going to do this anymore. We're sick and tired of this Theseus's ship of the Golden Five. It was never even the Golden Five to fucking begin with. They finally seen the light and have basically said, we just can't keep going on this way. They went to some tournament. I can't remember what the fuck it was, but they bombed out of the European minor qualifier for Katowice, which is, again, cataclysmic for the home team. And cataclysmic for legendary players. Again, like, when you think about how far some of the players on this roster have fucking fallen, it's unreal. At the start of this year, they're a relevant team. They still have these like puncher's chance in tournaments. The last 6 months, it has just been miserable to watch them play, whether you're a Virtus Pro fan or not, because it's always in the back of your mind how good they used to be and how good they can be. They took out Snacks. Well, first they take out Taz. Doesn't fix it. Taz is doing really well over at Kingwin right now, to the point where they're definitely a better team than this Virtus Pro lineup. Then, it's like we have Bialy go out. We have fucking Snacks go out. None of the players they're bringing in are even of the same caliber. I mean, Snatchy's the only one who's looked any good out of all of these, new Polish players they're trying to bring through. Neo, I can't keep banging on about it. It's just, it's been time, in my opinion. I'm not talking about Philip, the guy. I'm talking about Neo, the player. It's been time for him to retire for a while. I think Pasha's heart isn't in it anymore, which is weird for a player that you would always say is probably characterized by his like resilience in that way, and always has been. And it was just the right decision. Now, what's interesting is the general manager is the rumor is they're going to rebuild another Polish lineup around Snatchy. Maybe don't do that, guys. There's a fucking CIS super team out there waiting for an org like Virtus Pro to swoop in. And I don't know if Snatchy can play on it or not. Maybe he can. Snatchy's definitely a player worth keeping. But for me, I think Virtus Pro need to go back to CIS and get away from Poland right now. The strength and depth in the Polish scene isn't there anymore, and this has been a problem because Virtus Pro was so far and away and above the best Polish team. They didn't develop any of the tier 2 talent, and now that tier 2 talent is starting to develop. Yeah. It's not going to change in 2019. They're not going to be world beaters again in 2019. Meanwhile, you see motherfuckers like Adrian and stuff out there in free agency, fucking go get these players, Virtus Pro. I know you got the checkbook for it. So that'd be my take. But anyway, finally it's over. Some thoughts, a lament for Virtus Pro.
Yeah, but the thing is, I don't know about you, but any tears I had to weep for Virtus Pro. I mean, it's ages since that's happened, mate. It's not, if this had really shut it down after they'd gotten bad, fair enough. Like, we're talking like 6 months, a year after they got bad. Like, it's so removed from when this was relevant. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. I've already made a video. I think I made it over 6 months ago that was like, reminiscing on the things that were great about Virtus Pro. That's how long ago it is that we've been waiting for the corps to find. Like, basically, all that happened was, finally, Virtus Pro went in and turned off the fucking life support machine for the person that was never coming out of the coma. It's like the doctor just said, listen, we can't keep wasting resources. Can we turn it off? And then they were like, right, okay then. And can we grow another team from this fucking test tube? Why are you doing that then? Like, as you say right there, I put it this way, this is the best way to phrase it. There has only ever been 2 teams in the history of Polish Counter-Strike that were ever world class. They were both teams based around Neo and Taz. There are no other players that connect those teams. There were no other rival teams that ever came close to them for the Polish region. If anything, history has told you there was a massive exception to the rule that Poland does not produce world-class Counter-Strike teams. Now, that exception was so outrageously successful, you might get it twisted and think it's the other way around, that Poland's entitled to a world-class team. No, anything but that. Because in CSGO especially, this is the best example. In CSGO with teams like AGO, teams like Kingwin, we've had the funding now where if the people were out there that were going to be world-class, they would have done it by now. It's no longer the case of like, yeah, but we're all just sat back in Poland waiting for our chance of Virtus Pro. You're not sat anywhere. You're going to the same motherfucking tournaments and doing nothing. What, you're telling me there wasn't one dude in Poland for the last 20 years who knew how to call some strats who isn't called Neo or Taz? Fuck off. Of course there was. You either didn't find him or you were incapable of using him. So sadly, this is just where the Polish scene is at. They had one superb, like extraordinary, bizarre set of players that were able to accomplish something truly special. Those are gone now. Those players are all washed up, done, for whatever. Give them all different reasons to why they're gone. They're all gone at this point in time. That's why I don't get the angle of why rebuild around the Polish scene. Like, unless you want to have the 17th best team, doesn't make sense. Because as you say, not only is there like a lot of talent in your native region of CIS, but even more so, this is one of the things that's made the CIS scene so depressing to me. Because every time people are like, should player X join Hellraisers? Hellraisers doesn't have any money. Oh, what about Gambit? Should they get this guy? They don't have any fucking money. Who do you think these orgs are? There's only one org in that entire region who has a CIS team who has money. That's Na'Vi, and they're the stingiest cunts of all time. All the other ones had all the players, but none of the means to make it a really good lineup. As you say, Virtus Pro would actually be the one with the backing and in fact, quite frankly, the name where you might be able to convince some high-level guy to start making another really good CIS team, but for your squad. So to me, the entire thing's just like a clusterfuck. I don't really know what the point is. I'm just glad it's over. Like, I'm not one of these people who's sad. Like, oh, it's so sad Virtus Pro's died. Mate, Virtus Pro died for me over a year ago. I don't care.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, I've already done my grieving, you know, for sure. But let's just talk a little bit about the Taz situation, because for those who missed it, obviously Kingwin beat Virtus Pro at the
some shit tournament.
It was like the Global Challenge ESCA Mountain Dew League thing or something. I don't know. And obviously Taz, like, famously was like crying or whatever.
Thorin's gone.
Has he gone?
Yeah, he's drafted out. Hang on, I'm sure he'll be back.
Okay.
Right, I'm back.
There we go.
All right, yeah, no worries. Some shit tournament. Who cares? Peace. I'm out. Thank you very much.
You know what everyone tells you, Richard? People who have never done a show in their life. Why don't you use Discord? Discord's better. You know, Discord's better for every feature. Not only is it, I told you, incredibly bad because it doesn't do the pop-out box, which is really necessary for talk shows. Even better, when Discord crashes, the call doesn't crash. It just resets the entire app and you start back in the call again.
Wonderful. But anyway, so it was the ESEA Mountain Dew League finals or whatever, and obviously famously, like, you know, people saw Taz was crying. It was a big emotional moment for him. How vindicated sort of is Taz now overall, in the sense that, you know, let's be clear about what happened. Taz got removed from Virtus Pro on the basis that Virtus Pro couldn't improve. I mean, back when they still had Taz, I mean, there was still at least a relevant team. It wasn't the embarrassment that it went on to become. I never thought Taz was like one of the major problems within the team, but the people who drove that move, you know, Bialy, Snacks, they're not even on the roster anymore.
Speaking of which, another little example for any org owners out there, you know, when you trust your star player who tells you to kick someone, maybe figure out who that star player is. Because guess what? Those guys not only had you kick the legends of your team, they then just fucking left your team anyway. Like, they had no commitment to you in the long term. Why are you listening to those guys?
Yeah. And like, say what you will about Taz. Like, I have no doubt that maybe behind the scenes, there was like some ego issues. There was some friction issues. You know, quite famously, we know that Neo and Taz, you know, there was bickering going on. It would go back and forth between, you know, they would swap the in-game leadership roles around. Like, Virtus Pro fucking capitulated after Taz went. I mean, 100%. So I'm not saying that's the reason, but the people who drove and again, you know, you bring this point up all the time on the show where you go, you know, when you talk about old pros who, like, they get kicked from the legendary roster they haven't been good enough to play on, and they don't go to a small team, they just go straight into retirement or start streaming or whatever. And it's like, you motherfucker, you were stealing checks for years, your heart wasn't in it, and you didn't have the balls to fucking, like, step aside.
Sure.
Taz did exactly what you said. Like, motherfuckers who care about the game, go and do. He went and played for a team that was so beneath his station, with players that he couldn't have imagined he would ever be playing with, and he's actually built them up to winning a tier 2 tournament and beating his old team in the proceeds. So, you know, you gotta, whatever you want to say about Taz, man, like, the motherfucker does give a shit about Counter-Strike, and like, I think he'll be around. I mean, I still think he'll be a relevant factor in 2019 in a way that Pasha and Neo aren't. So, like, Taz definitely gets the last laugh on this one for me, brother. 100%.
He does, but at the same time, like, if I imagine what would have happened in Virtus Pro if he hadn't have left, I still think they'd have been a bad team. Maybe not as bad as they were now, okay. But for me, that entire team, like, it's one of those ones where when I saw some of the problems they were having, I was like, literally, you need to tear this entire team apart. Like, it's not remove one player, it's not upgrade. Fuck the concept of upgrade. You need, like, if you think about it, one of the things about Virtus Pro in the old days, like NIP, when one of your main strengths as a team, like, I'll give you the best example here. So I'll give you 3 teams: NIP, Virtus Pro, SK Gaming. 3 teams where when you start listing off their core qualities, it's all fucking intangibles. Oh, they're so clutch under pressure. Such great chemistry together. Oh, their veteran ability to come back into get. None of these things exist in the server. They're all in your fucking brain. So if any of those qualities go away, I'm out on those teams 100%. That's why I've been loving 2018 for MIBR. Because every little cunt who told me that, like, coldzera is the best player because he is not a loser like Device who loses all the games. Where's coldzera this year then, boys? What's that? He can shoot the same guy in the head and not win the game. It's almost like him being clutch and always comes through the big game.
Hasn't had a single MVP this year on HLTV. So worth noting now that the competitive season
shows how you can play it identically and it just doesn't matter, mate. People treat it like it's a 180-degree scenario.
Sam, how are we doing for time, by the way?
It's like 5 minutes left, I think.
Yeah,
5 minutes?
Hour and 20 in.
Oh, we can go like half 12. So maybe like 15, 20 minutes more.
15, 20 minutes more, and then we got a hard out. Okay. Well, in that case, I was going to talk very briefly about the European minor, because we had the qualifiers for that, but I suppose we should just kick on and start talking about the Blast over
when it gets to the tournament, I'm sure.
Yeah, no worries. So let's talk about the Blast. Basically, you know, like, I want to just say overall, it was a great event. When you consider where the Blast started, I think you were at that first event, you know, where they had to cancel the entire first day. To where they are now. I mean, the last couple of Blast events, first of all, they're doing these events in parts of the world that historically haven't always had, like, the best lands or whatever. Now, Portugal, you can argue, is a little bit different because they've had XL Party, which goes back, like, I want to say, like, 15 years. You know, it's a staple of their esports scene. But again, like, in terms of production value, the crowd experience, everything else, unbelievable. So I want to say, like, you know, I think that Nicola Niome is still a fucking bell end of the highest order. But you got to say that the Blast is, for me now, they end 2018 as a top tier tournament organizer. No doubt about it. Do you agree?
I'm way out on that. Come on. Here's the problem I have right now, okay, Richard.
I don't like the format. I'm not saying that. But I think production value, broadcast, fan experience, filling stadiums, they're ticking some major boxes.
Wait a minute. How can someone get credit for being a top tier tournament organizer when they've never run a tournament more than 2 days?
Okay, I mean that's an interesting theory. Do you believe that they need to do one that lasts like 2 weeks?
To be top tier, you have to be comparable to the other top tier people. If DreamHack does a Masters event, it's not a fucking 1.5 day event. If ESL does an event, it's not 1.5 day event. Anyone could pull off fucking events if they're 1 day long. You have to pull off 5 days of an event.
PLG definitely disproved that. I mean, you got all that fucking Emirati money. And you fucking, they just ran an absolute dog shit tournament where they barely streamed any fucking games.
My problem is this.
Yeah.
Blast Pro Series tournaments are exhibition tournaments. They are tournaments that are entirely designed around the crowd, the stadium you're in, around giving multiple games at the same time. You have a fun little shootout, and then you have one game at the entire tournament that matters. It's the real best of 3 final. That's the only match that actually matters. And because they pull off a 1.5 day event where the whole crowd's going, that makes it better than like a 5 day fucking ESL event that has like double elimination.
Well, I'm not saying it's
team. No, it's comparable.
I'm not saying it's better.
It's comparable, right?
I mean, I guess. Okay, so let me try and explain in my mind why I think my statement is true. Think about where DreamHack is, like by comparison to the even a DreamHack Winter in terms of broadcast experience, fan experience, how it looks, how it feels, caliber of matches. Think about like the DreamHack Winter we just watched, and then think about watching this Blast in Lisbon. So I guess maybe it feels that like they're a top tier tournament organizer now because some of the other ones have dropped off. But I in my mind,
if I had to guess, true. I would bet the budget for DreamHack Winter was like a fucking 1/10 of the budget for this event.
Quite possibly.
Remember, Refresh is the company where it reminds me of when fucking Blitz Esports was doing all this great content. Yeah, no wonder it's better than my content. I don't have someone giving me 100K to never have to turn a fucking red cent. Every piece of content I make has to literally make money or I'm not going to do it. Like, you're comparing not even apples and oranges. You're comparing a fucking car fender to a chipmunk that lives in South America. Like, there's no comparison, is there? Like, which is it better, being a car part or being a little animal? Which we judging them on? My problem is, you know what? Our Blast Pro Series event's fun to watch. Yeah, dynamite. Do they go to countries that you wouldn't think would have a good event and do a good event? Yeah, brilliant job. Aside from that, I don't get the hoopla. Like, I tell you what, do a 3-day event, then we can start talking about you being a top tournament organizer.
Okay. Well, maybe that's next for them. But the thing is, they seem so enamored with this format. I do not like the whole
point. Remember, the whole point of this is the business. The business is this model. It's these 2-day events where you start late on day 1, you do the Friday night, Saturday you do the event in the arena, you can move it anywhere in the world, so anyone could pick it and have it for their country. You've already got the teams because you've signed a deal with them to go there. You realize all of these go against everything that a tournament is in Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Like, you don't hold... Richard, this is a perfect example of where people hold ESL to an unfair standard, right? ESL has qualifiers for all their big tournaments, and they generally try to invite the right teams based on world rankings. But if they don't invite one team that people want, it's unfair bullshit. Every single fucking team at this tournament was invited. There was no way to qualify. These are all things that everyone would go hammer other tournament organizers for. Apparently, it's cool if Blast does it because, I don't know, something Refresh, something Astralis, something Prime Minister of Denmark. Profit. There you go.
So let's talk about the results. Again, you are right in the sense that the way the format works out, you only get the 1 best of 3 right at the end.
The format's garbage. Come on.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't like it.
It's a fun format, but it's not a competitive format.
No, for sure it isn't. And it's like for me. Having the best of 1s and having games simultaneously works if you have like dog shit teams that people don't want to watch or like only their specialist niche fan base would want to watch, but like every team here is a fucking top 10 team. And it's like I have to choose between watching the games. I don't like that. I think that doesn't do the right by fans. Like I had to go back and watch VODs from this tournament. It's like I don't want to have to do that unless for whatever reason I missed the games. I shouldn't have to choose between, again, hypothetically, Astralis versus Na'Vi, Cloud9 versus MIBR. I want to watch both of those games. I don't want to have to choose.
Sorry, Richard, we've only got 2 days.
Yeah.
So okay. Do you like it or not? Sounds like you don't like it that much.
Well, no. But I mean, what I'm
saying about this tournament that I actually logistically couldn't even have watched a third of live. I think it's the best.
Well, no, so I'm not saying it's best, but I think in terms of what they pulled off, I think it puts them now. Like if they would commit to changing the format next year, I love, in terms of the broadcast, I love what they're doing with their overlay. I love the lower thirds. I love their in-game stingers and stuff. To a lot of degrees, it is like watching, one of these like highly polished TV broadcasts. They're way and above better than some of the more established tournament organizers right now. They make DreamHack look amateur by comparison, in my opinion, just in terms of what goes out on the stream. If they would ever commit to changing the format, I think the Blast really has a great 2019. Now, whether they will, the format is pretty much what distinguishes them as different. Yeah. So that's the problem. But different isn't always better. But look,
the simple way I would summarize it is like this, Richard. Like, I could even agree with you on certain production aspects. I thought some of the things they did was cool in the arena, etc. Problem is, there's one reason I watch Counter-Strike tournaments. I want to watch really good Counter-Strike matches. If you can't deliver on that, you failed as far as I'm concerned. So I agree the final's good because that was a real match. I don't give a fuck if you run a tournament and you do. You could have literally fucking Michael Jordan be the commentator. I don't care. I want the actual games to be good.
Well, let's talk about the games. Obviously, as you alluded to, not necessarily the most competitive format in terms of what we got, but it was the last big CS event of the year. Astralis win it again, of course. Magisk MVP. Na'Vi, did their best in the final against them. So let's just wrap up the show, I guess, by talking about that final. Simple was on one in the final, as you'd expect. Had some brilliant moments just individually. The disparity between him and Zeus, who subsequently came out and said, yeah, don't worry, guys, I will be retiring in 2019, because the last few events, if you go look at Zeus's stats, it's fucking embarrassing. They're worse than MSL levels, and think about all the shit MSL used to get.
Imagine being the player that Zeus is and what he did in this final right here, then having the audacity to do that tweet he did to me. They're just the sheer gall of it.
I know. But this is the madness as well. Like, people coming out and saying, Thorin is like being disrespectful for comparing Zeus to a bot.
My fucking eyes every time I watch him on the screen. I'm not even joking. Every time we're in the green room and it got like, I told you, this is how you know you're a shit fucking individual player, is when we're in the green room, right, and we're watching the match and we're about to go out. If me and anyone else ever saw G2 playing, and it was Smiths and Body in a 2vx when I was lost, right? Turn away. Like, that shouldn't happen. If Astralis is in a 1vx, I don't know what's going to happen, do I? How can I know what's going to happen here? I know already it's lost when it's Zeus in the 1v1. I know the fucking round's over.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, no, it's unreal. And, like, had this terror. I mean, look, it tells you everything you need to know about. Like, he knows how shit he's been playing lately at these events. Because why put a tweet out in 2018 saying I will retire sometime next year? Why do you even do that? What is the point of it? What does it serve? I mean, first of all, again, it speaks to his inherent levels of narcissism, like one of the most narcissistic, delusional characters I think we've ever had. Like, for all his achievements, which are substantial, and he will go down. He's a future Hall of Famer, whatever, right? But in terms of his levels of peak narcissism, like, to not even let anybody sort of drive the discussion about anything positive for Na'Vi, you're just basically to come out and go, oh, don't worry, guys, I know I had a bad final, I'll be retiring, though. And then everyone goes, oh, God, a legend might be retiring in 20... Like, how fucking narcissistic do you have to fucking be to do that? It's madness to me. But anyway, so we can talk about that if you want to, but, just as some final thoughts, this fucking Astralis team, fuck me, dude. It is ridiculous now. Like, the things that they're achieving. I said it right at the start of the show. We're getting towards NIP levels of dominance. You have to understand.
Way better teams.
Yeah, exactly. They get to levels of NIP dominance in a much more competitive era. I think somebody did the math. They've already surpassed the SK Gaming, Brazilian era in terms of trophies won to maps played, win percentage. I think they've got something like an 80% win rate right now with this lineup in terms of, like, just their maps played at LAN tournaments. It's just unreal. And in terms of what they're doing, it's not that they are playing in a weakened era, but the point is you could take this team and put it in any moment in time, even into some future era. What they're doing is so good fundamentally. Like, I don't know how you dethrone Astralis. I feel only Astralis at this point can beat Astralis. I think they're going to continue this dominance. Certainly Q1 of 2019, maybe even go beyond. I think they're on course to become the most dominant team of all time, and it won't even be close. What do you think?
Well, the good news is every team in the history of Counter-Strike eventually drops off, and that usually comes from individual players not being as good or needing to change role or something. And I will say, Astralis isn't that many months away from that being the case. If you ever go and look how long really good lineups last, they're actually already getting close to sort of the end of when your window normally is.
Yeah,
so they're killing it right now, but eventually they will, unless they are the one team that books the trend, they will eventually take care of themselves. You're kind of right in that one. Like, it's not like you have to have the team come and beat them. Plus, you look at the moment, because of the year changing, there are a bunch of big name teams that are horny to do a big roster move. Get the right roster move, all of a sudden it could be over for them anyway. They could just be the next team that comes up that's really good. I will say, though, the context of what they're doing is absolutely unbelievable. Like, this year especially has shown me why there's one thing you never do with fans. You never include fans in discussions of who's the best and where do we rank people in history, because they don't understand context. Like, all year long, I've had people telling me things that are factually inaccurate about the great teams in history. Like telling me stuff like that Astralis hasn't won enough tournaments yet. What teams are you comparing them to? Like, what are these teams that you imagine have won like these 70 tournaments in the past? Like, you know, there was some stat that in like the last 12 LAN tournaments Astralis has been to, they were in the final like 10 of them or something.
Yeah.
What teams do you think in history are doing this stuff? It's basically only NIP from the beginning of CSGO. That's it. That's it.
The only argument in that regard that I can maybe get on board with is that they need to win like the next major, maybe, which I think they'll do.
Why the fuck do they?
Well, sure. I'm not saying I am on board with it, but I'm saying, you know how it is. It always comes up in like football and basketball about championship rings, and majors are the equivalent of that, right? And obviously that Fnatic lineup has more, and blah blah, blah blah blah. Like I could sit and have an intellectual discussion and engage with that argument. Everything else is bullshit. The idea that they haven't won enough trophies when they've been just hands down the best team of 2018, and it's not even been close. Like we're talking about the disparity between a team like fucking Team Liquid, who probably that Team Liquid team, if they played in any other era, would have been the #1 team.
Here's the maddest stat. Are you ready? There were, in the entire time this Astralis lineup has been together, they have only ever been swept in a LAN series twice out of 51 series.
Yeah, that's madness. That is madness.
If you think in your mind right now that Fnatic never got 2-0'd, that NIP eventually never got 2-0'd, that SK Gaming never got... Of course they did. These teams weren't fucking Superman. They were just the best teams ever. Like, they were still... Even the best team ever still has the rivals in their era who are just below them, and one of them always beats them and has a nice matchup. Like, Astralis is doing things now that are inconceivable. They're better than the shit NIP was doing, because you add in all the context. They can go... What's mad is they're already comparable to NIP without even the fucking context. Then you put in all the context, it makes it even more impressive.
So yeah, I guess we need to wrap up the show there, right? Is it?
Yeah, sure.
We
okay next week, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, we'll throw one in before Christmas, so I get to try out another sweater. There's a quick $100 patron question from Jerky's Minion. It just says, who is the best producer you guys have worked with at any CS event over the past 5 years? It's kind of an interesting behind-the-scenes question. For me, it's kind of complex because obviously I was working closely with a lot of the producers at E-League who were like Emmy award-winning sports like directors and producers. And I already talked about, like, you know, there was a guy called Daly over at the studio who, you know, like not a lot of people know about him, and obviously Matt Mosteller. Like, working for a TV company, it kicks it up a notch in your mind. But I think it's quite telling that when they said to me, hey, we want an esports director to come in, I went and got Jason Baker, you know, Alchemist to you guys. Like, I mean, he was my man. He was my pick. They said, like, you know, we'll get you a guy from esports so you got a familiar voice in your ear to try and drive the traffic. I think it was a bit of a poison chalice for him. I don't know how much of a good time he had at E-League because a TV production room's quite stressful. But I mean, Alchemist's a guy that I'll always put in the frame for any production jobs. You know, he was just at the Blast at this event, and I'm singing the praises for. You know, that's not a coincidence. So working with him's always been great, and that's no disrespect to anyone else. You know, just probably is like a personal favorite of mine because I've worked with him for so much down the years, going all the way back to MLG and everything else. So I don't know if you've got a personal favorite in that regard.
I would say similar people to the ones you referenced there. The big problem is this, is it's very hard to judge how good the producers are because the actual end product you see often doesn't have that much to do with the producer himself. Like, for example, as I alluded to before with the example of the difference between DreamHack and Refresh is it's the resources you're given. Like, I know some people who, when I've talked to them, they were very on point about how they wanted to produce the show. They had very good ideas. But then you talk to them about why haven't you got X, Y, and Z? They just strapped for cash. Like, their tournament organizer didn't give them enough crew or only gave them a very limited amount of camera angles, or even worse, tells them, like, you've got to ram in this much content every day on the stream, no time to do any extra things. And so all the things that sadly would have allowed me to test, like, the limits of some of these people and see, you know, what could they really come up with? Most people, quite frankly, in esports, that's the area that gets pinched the hardest right now because the margins are so rough for people who are tournament organizers. Production's an area where you have to cut every corner you can. Because think about it, when you want to get someone like fucking Henry G, Anders Bloom, me, we're not going to come and say, all right, well, you don't have much budget, well, do we work for half price? No, you're going to have to give us our rate, and the fucking guy who gets hit with the downsizing, someone who works behind the camera, isn't he?
Always,
so it's always rough to know on that one. I'd agree with you. Some of the big names, you know, or some of the better companies tend to have pretty good people behind the scenes. There's no real like MVP type guy who's clearly the best.
Yeah, and it is worth just adding that point. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, like a lot of these guys, you don't even know their names. You know, like we work with them, and they're the motherfuckers. Like, you know, we complain about some of the hours we work. Those guys are there before us. They're after us. There's a lot that goes on in those production trucks, dude. It's pretty fucking wild. And on top of that, as you say, whenever there's a budget squeeze, they're the ones who get told, right? Well, you know, there's no catering for you. It's
like some of the events that get bagged on for having like, you know, suspect production, or maybe they're like bad with like switching the camera. You can't even judge them from the outside as you'd want to, because when I've known personally from talking to some of the people in some of those companies, sometimes it's a company where the resources are, there's one guy who does like 2 different streams at once. So he has to watch 2 things at once and react instantly. Like, no one can do that. So if I know that that's going on, I know as a fan you can't know that. You just watch the stream and you expect a good product. But like the disparity across the board from orgs in terms of how much they put into production, how much they'll give these people is crazy. Even though on the front end, rather, when you see the actual like production, you'd think these streams were all had similar amounts, but they aren't. It can be real feast or famine behind the scenes.
Yeah. All right, then. So we're going to wrap up the show there. I know people are spamming. Why haven't you talked about Carrigan? We'll do it in the next show. We'll try and fit one in before Christmas.
I hope he doesn't fucking do something between now and the next show. Fucking hell. We better get that in now, right?
Yeah,
you are aware, guys, there's nothing until next year.
Yeah, there's plenty of time. Plenty of time. So anyway, all that remains to be said is a shout out to the sponsor, Rivalry.gg. You head to rivalry.gg/RLS. You can qualify for up to $350 of VIP bonuses, so you can place bets on esports events in a safe and ethical environment. And obviously as well, our patrons, which include Jerky's Minion in our $100 section, Detlef Insomniac and Botvik, our $50 patrons, Benakagi Assassin, Carv, Daniel Plamanov Yordanov, Dieter Dornov Christensen, Madsen, Manuel Stockley, Marcus Kiumpa, Nostradamus, Pete Bidstrup, Reykjavik on Steam, Roosty, Sard Sawar, TC Owens, Watch Doge, and William Southern. Big shout out to everyone who makes a contribution, especially those guys. That was by the numbers for this week. Like I say, we'll try and be back before Christmas, and until then, take care of yourselves.